From the very beginning, something about Patricia Anderson always felt off, like she carried a hidden world behind her polished smile. I had watched her for years, sensing a second life tucked carefully behind her neat clothes and cold manners. But I never imagined I would end up seeing proof of it with my own eyes, captured clearly on our company's security cameras. For a full decade, I poured every ounce of my energy into Anderson Family Jewelers, taking it from a quiet little neighborhood shop to a respected, modern brand with 3 busy locations across the city. David's family had owned the store for generations, passing it down with pride, but it was my business degree, my updated systems, and my advertising work that lifted the company into the present and helped it finally flourish. Still, Patricia never let me forget that. To her, I would always be an outsider wearing the Anderson name, but not born into it. She repeated it often, reminding me that this family name meant something special in the city. Even as the profits I created doubled what they used to earn, everything shifted 3 months ago, when the first strange numbers appeared in our books. At first, they were small little things buried in the pages, a missing deposit here, a few thousand unaccounted for there. But once I began paying closer attention, the irregularities grew, spreading like cracks along the foundation of our business. By the time I dug deeper and traced every suspicious number, a total of $250,000 had disappeared without explanation. When I brought it to David, he insisted it was a misunderstanding. His mother had handled the books for decades. She wouldn't do something like that, but I knew what I had been noticing. Her wardrobe had become noticeably more expensive, showing off designer brands she never used to wear. She had new jewelry pieces too, ones I knew didn't come from our store. Her behavior didn't match the salary she earned. So I made a quiet choice. I upgraded our security cameras, installing new ones in the showroom and in the back office where the money was counted and stored. Then I waited for the truth to reveal itself. It didn't take long. One Sunday morning, Patricia called an emergency family meeting, gathering everyone in the conference room as if something urgent depended on it. She stood confidently at the head of the table, her voice sharp as she demanded everyone sit. Emma came with her husband, Mark joined through video call, and even George, David's father, stepped out of retirement to attend. Patricia pretended to carry concern in her eyes as she announced she had uncovered serious problems in our finances. She spoke as though she alone had discovered the issue, describing the situation with slow, dramatic pauses. The business is in trouble, she claimed, though we were actually having the best quarter we'd ever recorded. David tensed beside me while Patricia flipped open a prepared folder, her manicured nails shining under the conference lights. She listed false accusations, missing documentation, mismatched inventory, poor planning, and carefully directed all blame toward me, saying our issues began when I took charge of the financial planning. I felt my hands tighten under the table. She was really doing it. I let her finish her rehearsed lines before I calmly opened my laptop. I told her that before she continued, the whole family needed to see some very important security footage. The room fell quiet. Patricia's face twitched for a second, her perfect composure breaking like thin ice. I connected my laptop to the conference room TV and selected the footage from last Tuesday at 2 a.m. The screen lit up with Patricia walking into the store after hours. The video was so clear that even the small movements of her hands were visible. She moved with total confidence, heading straight to the office safe. Everyone watched in frozen silence as she emptied the deposits into her designer handbag without hesitation. She then walked to the display cases and carefully selected jewelry pieces, placing them in her bag one by one with practiced ease. David's voice cracked softly as he whispered his mother's name, unable to understand what he was seeing. I told everyone to keep watching because there was more. At 2:37 a.m., the glow of Patricia's phone lit up her face, revealing a smile none of us had ever seen before, warm and excited. She answered the call, talked quietly, and then left the store carrying both cash and jewelry. I switched to the next video, the one from across the street, showing her stepping into a sleek black Mercedes with a driver waiting. I pulled up more footage showing the Mercedes driving to the Harbor View Hotel, the most expensive hotel in the city. Everyone watched Patricia step out of the car looking oddly youthful and energized as she greeted a tall, distinguished man in an expensive suit. His name, I explained, was Richard Montgomery. A real estate developer from Chicago, also married, with 3 children. The room fell still. George finally spoke, his voice heavy with disbelief, but Patricia quickly gathered her things and tried to dismiss the evidence as an invasion of privacy. I placed another folder on the table. This wasn't about her affair, I told her. It was about the $250,000 she had taken. Money matching the exact down payment for a new condo in Chicago, under the name Patricia Montgomery. The room erupted in confusion, Emma cried. Mark demanded answers through his screen, and George looked suddenly older. David stood up slowly, betrayal carved into his expression. Patricia tried to defend herself, claiming Richard loved her, and that they were starting a new life together using our business money. She lashed out at me next, calling me unworthy of the Anderson name. But I remained calm as I presented the final document, stating clearly that all the evidence would be turned over to the police the next morning. The mention of police struck Patricia like a blow. She begged David for help, but he stared only at the screen showing her with her lover. Their family's wealth stuffed into her bag, he told her to leave. Her heels echoed sharply as she ran out, escaping the company she had nearly destroyed. But her departure was only the beginning. Over the next 2 days, David and I dug through years of financial records, discovering her theft went far deeper than we ever imagined. She hadn't just taken $250,000. She had been stealing in small amounts for years, slowly, quietly testing how much she could get away with. In the last year alone, she had taken nearly $800,000. She used the store's reputation to open secret lines of credit, sold original custom pieces to clients, and then had cheap copies made to sell again. When I showed David proof, the sapphire set the Henderson family commissioned, sold multiple times, he buried his face in his hands. The trust people placed in our family, in our store, had been betrayed completely. When the police arrived on Monday morning, they focused immediately on one part of the case above all others. They were particularly interested in the counterfeit jewelry operation. Apparently, Patricia's boyfriend, Richard, wasn't just a real estate developer. He had connections to a sophisticated counterfeiting ring operating across 3 states. Mrs. Anderson, Detective Rivers, consulted us notes. Did you ever meet any of your mother-in-law's associates at charity functions? Particularly anyone who dealt in estate jewelry? I thought back to all society events Patricia had insisted to attend. There was one woman, Carolyn something. She always wanted to discuss her vintage pieces. Carolyn Blackwood. The detective showed me a photo. That's her. She's Richard Montgomery's sister in a known fence for stolen jewelry. The pieces were falling into place. Patricia hadn't just been stealing from us. She'd been using our legitimate business as a front for a larger criminal enterprise. Every society connection, every charity board she sat in, they were all networking porteurs for her other life. Immaculate around noon, her voice shaking. Sarah, the country club just called. Mom's been charging thousands to our family account. Clothing, spa treatments, private dining rooms for her meetings with Richard and jewelry buyers. The club manager said she'd host these exclusive private showings in the members' lounge. Oh God, she was selling fake pieces right there at our club. The scandal exploded across our social circle like wildfire. Patricia's carefully cultivated image as their respectable business owner's wife crumbled. As more victims came forward, the Hendersons weren't the only ones who had bought duplicate pieces. Patricia had been running this scam on multiple wealthy clients, all while maintaining her facade of old money respectability. Around 3 o'clock, George called. I've been going through our personal accounts, Hesed, sounding age beyond his years. The beach house in Florida. She reorganized it last year. Took out $400,000. The papers have her forging my signature. Dad, David started. There's more. Your mother's been emptying our retirement accounts. Everything we saved, it's gone to this other life she's been living. I felt sick. Patricia hadn't just betrayed Thebasiness. She'd stolen her own husband's future. Then came the text message from an unknown number. You think you're sock lever, Sarah? But you have no idea what you've done. Richard and I will be Longoni before the police figure it all out. Enjoy trying to save the business reputation after this scandal. Nobody will trust the Anderson name again. Issued the message to Detective Rivers. He smiled grimly. Actually, Mrs. Anderson, we've already frozen all gnome accounts connected to both Patricia and Richard Montgomery, including that condo in Chicago. She won't get away with this. I needed to hear it. Their entire network is under surveillance. Has been for months. Your evidence was the final piece we needed. Mrs. Anderson Sr. wasn't just stealing from her family. She was part of a multi-million-dollar jewelry counterfeiting operation. The FBI is involved now. David sat down heavily. The FBI. My mother's going top percent. I took his hand. She made her choices. David, none of this is your fault. That evening, as we were closing store, Emma rushed in waving her phone. You need to see this. Mom just went live on Instagram. Patricia's face filled the screen, carefully made up despite her obvious distress. My darling friends and family, she began, her voice trembling artfully. I need to tell you my side of the story. Yes, I made some mistakes. But I was trapped in a loveless marriage, suffocating under the weight of family expectations. Richard showed me what real love could be. Turn it off, David said quietly. But Patricia's performance wasn't finished. And Sarah, she continued, her voice hardening. My dear daughter-in-law who thinks she knows everything about running a business. Let me tell you something about the Anderson legacy. I protected it for 30 years. It made the connections, maintained our social standing. You're just an accountant who got lucky, and now you've destroyed everything I built. Emma shut off the video. There are hundreds of comments. People are already taking sides. I looked around the showroom at cases of genuine jewelry we'd sold honestly. For generations at the family photos on the walls at my husband's devastated face. No, I said firmly. She doesn't get to rewrite this story. Tomorrow morning we're holding a press conference. We're going to tell Orkleans exactly what happened. Make it trite with anyone who bought counterfeit pieces and rebuild this business. The right way. The Anderson name will be ruined, Emma whispered. The Anderson name stands for more than Patricia's crimes, I replied. It stands for 3 generations of honest business before she tainted it. And it will stand for how we make this right. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Patricia's number. You'll regret this. Richard has friends you don't want to meet. But she didn't know what I knew. That while she was making threats, the FBI was closing in on her location. That her precious Richard had already cut a deal to testify against her. That her carefully constructed double life was about to come crashing down. The FBI caught up with Patricia at a private area strip just outside the city. Her precious Richard had already given up their escape plan in exchange for a lighter sentence. In the end, her double life collapsed as quickly as a house of cards in a storm. We found her trying to board a private plane to the Cayman Islands. Detective Rivers informed us. She had 3 suitcases full of jewelry, both real and counterfeit pieces, and nearly $100,000 in cash. The real jewelry, David asked quietly, was it from our store? The detective nodded. We'll need you to come identify the pieces. Some appeared to be Anderson family heirlooms that hit George hardest of all. Among stolen items was his grandmother's Shafir necklace, a piece Patricia had claimed was lost years ago. She'd been systematically looting not just the busyness but the family's heritage. The press conference was brutal but necessary. We stood together, David, Emma, George, and I, facing a room full of reporters and angry clients. Anderson Family Jewelers has been a part of this community for 3 generations, a beggin. The actions of one person do not define us. To every client who purchases jewelry from us, we make this promise. Bring your pieces in for authentication. If you received a counterfeit item, we will replace it with a genuine piece at no cost. How can we trust anything from Anderson Jewelers now? Someone shouted because we're putting everything on Unforgettable, I replied. Full transparency, new certification processes, and most importantly, we're making this right. Even if it means rebuilding from scratch. The headlines the next day were surprisingly supportive. Family jeweler uncovers international counterfeit ringgit. Anderson hears wife stays. Legacy business from criminal enterprise. Patricia's arrest made national news. The footage of her being led away in handcuffs, still wearing her necklace and signature pearls, went viral. Her carefully crafted society image shattered completely when the fire revealed the full scope of her crimes. It wasn't just jewelry. Detective Rivers explained during a follow-up meeting, "Your mother-in-law was laundering money through multiple legitimate businesses. The country club events, the charity boards, they were all networking porteurs for her criminal activities." Richard Montgomery turned out to be small fish compared to the people Patricia had really been working with. Her connections reach into a world of high-end art theft, internationality laundering, and sophisticated counter operations. She's looking at 15 to 20 years, the detective concocted. Mr. Montgomery's testimonial alone. "I want to see her," David interrupted. We all turned to look at him. It was the first time he'd spoken about his mother in days. The prison meeting room was cold and sterile, nothing like the luxury Patricia had surrounded herself with for so long. She sat there in her orange jumpsuit, somehow still managing to look imperious. "Darling," she began, reaching for David's hand across the table. He pulled back. "Why, Mom? We had everything. Family, respect, a legitimate business. Why throw it all away? You don't understand," she hissed, her fad cracking. "I was meant for more than being some small-town jeweler's wife. Richard showed me a bigger world." "Richard," I cut in. "The same Richard who sold you out to the FBI and under Anher." Her face contorted. "This is a liar fault if you hadn't installed Thassa cameras. If you hadn't stolen from your own family," I corrected quietly. "Family?" She laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about family? I built the Anderson Namin this city. I made us matter." "No." Mom. David stood up. "You destroyed everything Grandpa and Dad built, but we're going to rebuild it without you." We left her there, still ranting about Richard Anders's stolen dreams of grandeur. Outside of prison, David took a deep breath of free air. "You okay?" I asked softly. He managed a small smile. "Getting there. The store's appointment book is full next week. Seems like our transparency policy is working." He was right. Something unexpected had happened in the wake of the scandal. Our honest handling of the situation had earned us a new kind of respect. Clients appreciated our commitment to making things right. 6 months later, we held a grand reopening. The store had been renovated, secured chuprid, and every piece of jewelry came with ironclad authentication. George even brought out vintage photos of the original Anderson jewelers for display. "Look at this." Emma pointed to a faded picture of their grandfather standing proudly in front of the first story. "This is our real legacy, not Mom's schemes." As clients filled the showroom, I overheard one elderly woman telling her friend, "You know, I've been coming here for 40 years. What happened was terrible, but seeing how they handled it. That's the Anderson family I've always known." David squeezed my hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for saving our family's name." "Our family," I corrected him. "After all, I am an Anderson." Now, we'd lost money, trust, and innocence in Patricia's scheme, but gained something too. A stronger foundation built on truth rather than appearances. Sometimes it takes a complete breakdown to build something better. The last we heard, Patricia was organizing a prison fashion show. Some habits die hard, but her days of using Anderson name for crime were over. Our legacy would be one of honesty, resilience, and redemption. A true family business built to